What a welcome. What a place this is. My goodness. Who would have imagined pizza could build this? You know that? This is really something. Don't you love this country? What a home this is. What grounds these are. The pool. The golf course. You know, if a Democrat were here, he'd look around and say, no one should live like this. You know? Republicans come here and say, everyone should live like this. All right? This is a real tribute to America, to entrepreneurship. I must admit I'm moved by this experience, this story. 1984, is that when you said you got started? 1984, made his first pizza, 1984, and that had the good judgment to wait for 3 or 4 more years, or 3 or 4 more shops before she signed on. But it apparently was going pretty well, and those two came together. And then this couple over here, they just, you know, they dig black stuff from under the ground, known as coal, and they've apparently done okay doing that. Is that right? Yeah. And just a coal miner. That's all you are, right, Joe? I think back to my own family. My dad was born in Mexico. I don't think many people know that, but he was born in Mexico of American parents who'd been living there for many years, and then there was revolution in Mexico. This is around 1910 or so. So they came back to the U.S. as refugees. They were cared for in El Paso by the government. And then his dad, who was a contractor, went from place to place, Los Angeles, Idaho, Utah, went broke in each place. My dad never completed college, didn't have the time or the money to get that done, but became head of a car company. Ran American Motors, made Ramblers, but it was okay back then to have a Rambler. And then ran for governor, became governor of his state 3 times. Just an amazing country. I've spent my time in business, 25 years in business. I travel around the world and notice the remarkable differences between different nations and the difference in prosperity between different nations that were next door to each other. And whether it was, you know, the United States and, not Canada, but Mexico, or Israel and Egypt, or Chile and Ecuador, the disparity is enormous. And I used to spent a lot of time thinking about why it was so different in places so close and with people, you know, with the same DNA. How can we have such different levels of prosperity? And then I read a book by a guy named David Landis. He was a retired professor from Harvard, and he wrote something called The Wealth and Poverty of Nations. And it traces all the great civilizations that have ever been built on the planet, and the characteristics of those nations, and then how they declined over time. And he sums up his whole work after about 500 pages with roughly these words. He says, if you can learn anything from the history of the economic development of the world, it's this: culture makes all the difference. What people believe, their values, their principles, that makes all the difference. And as you look at America, what has made us the most powerful nation in the history of the earth is what I referenced with these guys and my dad and with you. It is a spirit of can-do and entrepreneurship and innovativeness which flowed from the decision by the founders to give us multiple kinds of liberty, but 2 in particular. 1, political liberty to choose our course, but number 2, economic liberty. They said that we were endowed by our Creator with our rights, not the government, but our Creator, and among them were life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. This would be the place on the planet where people could pursue happiness the way they choose. And by virtue of that, entrepreneurs of all kinds tried to begin businesses. Most of them failed. A few of them succeeded brilliantly. And the success of those few does not make us poorer. It makes us better off. That is what America is. And as I watch this president attack success, I say you are attacking the very foundation of America's economic vitality. I don't think he understands it. So as John said, that he's hoping that I can get the good days back. And I was on Fox this morning, on Fox and Friends, and Steve Ducey, he said, well, you know, what are you going to do to get the economy better? And I said, it's really pretty straightforward. You have to make America the most attractive place in the world again for entrepreneurs and innovators and job creators. That's what you have to do. You just have to say what kind of regulation and regulators will encourage new businesses. What kind of tax structure will do that? What kind of energy policies? I mean, you've got a president that doesn't like energy as long as it comes from under the ground. The other day he said he was for all of the above when it comes to energy. And I couldn't figure it out because, as you know, he's made it harder to get natural gas by having the EPA try and regulate fracking, and he's made it harder to get oil by putting a moratorium on drilling in the Gulf, won't drill in Anwar, won't drill in the Outer Continental Shelf. He's made it harder to get coal out of the ground with all sorts of new regulations and harder to burn it. So I thought, how in the world is he for all of the above? And then I realized what he meant. He meant for everything above the ground, all right? So he's for wind and solar, but he's not for anything below the ground. I'm for all, above and below the ground. I mean, so this is a course for America to return to the principles that made us the nation that we are. The president says he wants to fundamentally transform America. I don't want to change America. I want to restore to America the principles of liberty and freedom and entrepreneurship and innovativeness that made us the economic powerhouse of the world. And the consequence, yeah, I agree, thank you. The consequence of going down the road we're on is really so severe that it's almost not worth talking about, because you've seen what's happened in Europe as they've gone to a point, first of all, by sacrificing their military and saying, look, we can't pay for all the things we want to do and have a military, so they keep cutting back. Even Great Britain, I understand, sold their last aircraft carrier. And not, by the way, it should not come as a coincidence that the Argentines decide that they own the Falklands when the Brits get rid of their last aircraft carrier. I mean, figure this out, all right? It doesn't take rocket science to understand how the world works. So they've sacrificed their military, and then they began borrowing, and now they're in economic distress. And that's the path that we're on. The president is willing to cut our military dramatically, and at the same time, he's willing to borrow an extra $1 trillion a year. And at some point, we will hit the Italy, Spain, Greece type wall. I don't think that happens in the next year or two. I may be wrong. I think it takes longer than that, but within the 5 to 10 year span. But that's not forever. And that's the course we're on with this president. I find it unbelievable that he's willing to pass on to the next generation the extraordinary debts that our generation has racked up. I think it's immoral. I simply think it's wrong for us to keep spending more than we take in. He said about President Bush that it was un-American for President Bush to borrow hundreds of billions of dollars more than we took in. Now he's borrowing trillions of dollars more. As a matter of fact, he is on track by the end of 4 years to have amassed almost as much public debt as all the prior presidents combined. That's where he's taking us. And then, of course, the big overhang on our economy is the promises we've made, again, to my generation, for Social Security and Medicare. $62 trillion of unfunded liabilities that the young people in this audience will have to pay for. And in 3.5 years, the president's proposed no solution to take care of that challenge. So I think this is a critical time, a critical election. The president said this is a defining election. I agree. We know where his vision would take us. We've seen it for the last 3.5 years. More and more debt, more joblessness, a reduction in entrepreneurship. By the way, number of new businesses started per year has dropped by 100,000 a year under this president. We got to get America back on track, and your support means the world to making that happen. I just want to close with a brief sentiment about one thing that really drives me nuts about the president. And that is his willingness to divide the American people. And in every case where he's failed, to see if he can't blame someone else for the failure. And it is divisive. It is a trick and a gimmick which has been used in other nations, much to their peril. And I don't think of America as being a divided nation. I believe in the phrase, one nation under God. When I think of this country, I think of my life's experiences when when I've looked to the American people and hoped to find unity and have seen it. I was in my state of Massachusetts serving as governor. I got a call from the airport, and they said that the remains of a soldier from Iraq were coming home on a U.S. Airways flight. They called the parents to meet the body of their son, but the parents lived too far away to get there in time. And they asked if I could go to the airport in their stead to receive the body. Because the state capital of Massachusetts is so close to the airport, I said, of course. We got in the car and drove to the airport and rode out on the tarmac, and the plane came in. The passengers disembarked, and then the luggage came off on the conveyor belt, and then finally the casket appeared. Came down the conveyor, and the soldiers that were there to receive it picked it up and began to put it in the hearse. I put my hand over my heart, and the state troopers that were there with me saluted. And I happened to glance up at the terminal, and it seems that the people who'd come off the aircraft had seen all those police cars, and so they'd lined up against the glass window there to see what was going on. And then the people walking down the hall, they saw the people lined up against the glass, so they crowded in behind them. There was a crowd about the size of this here. And as I looked up there, every single person I saw had their hand in their heart. We're very patriotic people. We love this country. I'm convinced we're united people. When I think of America, it's scenes like that I think of. I know we face tough challenges. The debt, the need to rekindle the foundation of our economy, Iran about to become nuclear under this president, China becoming an economic powerhouse and soon to be a military powerhouse. We face some real challenges. But I happen to think that if we have a leader that'll tell the truth and who will live with integrity and who understands how the economy works, who's been in the real economy and knows how it works, if that leader will call on the American people in a way that unites the American people, we'll overcome the challenges we have. And I intend to be that leader with your help. So thank you so much. Thank you for your help. Joe, Kelly, John, Annette, no more speeches? Did everybody get a piece of pizza? If you did not get a piece of pizza, they are available at about $4.99 for a medium-sized pizza at a Papa John's store near you, right? Maybe an extra buck, I'm not sure. But anyway, you guys, thank you so much for being here. You're so very kind, and thank you to our hosts for opening their home. And by the way, it's such a lovely home, and you wouldn't want to forget this evening. If you'd like just to take a souvenir on the way out, you know. Thanks, you guys. Thanks so much.